Good morning. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. And hopefully you're having a great week. We're going to cap it off with some fantasy baseball talk today from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, and also on Sunday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern. Today on the show, we got a special treat for you. George Kurtz is on vacation. He is having a great time on the west coast of Florida watching his Yankees play the Rays at Steinbrenner Field. So we bring in Tom Vecchio from SportsGrid here today to go over everything happening in the world of fantasy baseball, maybe give you some ideas as to how you can play some games today and talk about what we've seen thus far in the month of April. Tom, great to have you here on Fantasy Sports Today. What's going on?
Of course, thanks for having me. Yeah, I was going to say this is a bit of a relief appearance, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's more of like a spot start, long reliever, whatever you want to call it. I'm the opener, maybe in some capacity, but we got a lot to get to. We had some awesome games last night. We actually had an awesome game to start things yesterday. I made a crucial mistake yesterday by leaving Andrew Abbott on my bench, racking up 11 strikeouts against the Orioles. Not too happy about that, but let's roll into today.
Yeah, wild game yesterday with the Cubs and Diamondbacks, to say the least. I was following that during the day and checked back to see how that finished. But also, maybe the best pitching matchup, at least on paper, of the season since opening day, with those aces going at it back and forth. I mean, I think we got the guy on the left, maybe the favorite to win the Cy Young, has been, I think, the best pitcher probably in baseball this season. Crochet would probably argue, but Yamamoto yesterday, 10 strikeouts, 5 hits, no walks. I mean, DeGrom, if I'm not mistaken, was the first time he pitched as an underdog in baseball in years. DeGrom did his part too. But needless to say, Tom, moving forward, I think DeGrom owners in fantasy are feeling pretty good because, I mean, they drafted him really high. But it looks to me as we progress here, if Yamamoto, and the key number for me here is actually 7 innings pitched. The Dodgers, generally speaking, are not allowing their guys to go through the third time of the lineup. He may be the exception to the rule. We'll see if when Kershaw comes back, he's the kind of guy that can do that, and they would allow that. But that's always the rub with LA, Tom. And now all of a sudden we're talking about putting up stats that replicate Cy Young, best pitcher in baseball, etc. And we'll just see how these things flow. But thus far, completely different April in 2025 for Yamamoto than we saw in 2024.
Exactly. I think you have to be encouraged whether you have Yamamoto or DeGrom. Like you said, getting to the 7th inning for, I would say, both of them is big for different reasons. Obviously, with DeGrom coming back from the injury, they have to trust him getting out there. And then with the Dodgers, getting to that 6th, 7th inning, at least from my perspective as someone that plays in a league where we have QS and it's not wins, being pulled to 5.1 or 5.2 is huge as someone that has Glass now on my team. But Yamamoto getting there, being the anchor of that rotation is absolutely huge for them. I'm going to say it's one of the best games, and like you said, one of the best pitching matchups that we've had throughout the entire so far of the year, and what we probably will end up having, unless we have, maybe a Crochet versus Sale. I don't know when they play, but that would be an awesome matchup to see that type of thing. But this game is awesome. The strikeouts will be there. We'll get into Cy Young talk a little bit later, but Yamamoto has got to be the favorite, if not odds on, which we'll get to. But from just an optics perspective, he has to be there.
Yeah, we just don't get many 20-game winners, too, anymore in baseball, and this is a guy that legit has a shot to do that. Meanwhile, we saw the season debut a little bit earlier than expected for Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves. What we thought it would be Spencer Strider to the rescue, and the next month, Ronald Acuna Jr. to the rescue. But my gosh, the Braves may need 6 guys to come back. I mean, they are having a brutal season thus far. Strider did a good job. 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. And Tom, the Braves, outside of Spencer Schwellenbach's last start, have been, very good in the pitching market here thus far. I don't know what is going on with their hitting at all. Is Acuna mean that much to the lineup? I mean, they won a World Series without this guy a couple of years ago too. So a good start for Strider here. But if you thought that him coming back, immediately being plugged into the Braves lineup, and you don't use QS in your league and you use wins, I'm assuming at some point that record will flip for Atlanta, but I gotta tell you, as we go on here, I'm a little concerned that some of these hitters are just not going to turn it on.
Yeah, some of the hitters definitely struggling, at least to start. Riley got off to a really slow start, then he turned things on over really the past week and a half or so. He has been awesome, but I think everything should be encouraged from a Strider perspective. He went out there, he looked good, gave up the home run to Vladdy, oddly enough. It was the first home run for Vladdy on the season against one of the best pitchers in the league. I think things will only improve for Strider, but it really does come down to that lineup. Like, let's just call it what it is for last night. Like, Chris Paddock going up against that lineup, I wasn't expecting much from Chris Paddock, right? And the Braves lineup got off to a really slow start. They come from behind and they win that game. But I think those are more concerning signs when they're not performing against below average pitchers. If they run into some pitchers that are at the top of their game, it could be a long summer for them.
Yeah, it could, but still we are in April and the weather still not yet warm. Although the wind, I think, must have been blowing out yesterday at Wrigley as the Diamondbacks and Cubs were playing a very extreme, low-scoring game through about 6, 7 innings of this one, and then all of a sudden things just went bananas yesterday. Carson Kelly and both sides, hitting home runs, 10 runs. If I think I saw that in one inning. The Cubs end up coming back to beat the Diamondbacks by a final of 13-11 yesterday, Tom. And maybe I should have followed this a little bit closer, but was the wind not blowing early in the game and then all of a sudden late? Is that what happened there?
It was supposed to be about 15 sustained with gusts up to 40. At least that's what I saw pregame. I was on the over for the game, and it started off really slow. As you said, it was 2-1 into the seventh inning, and we had home runs from Kelly, and we had a late one from Tucker and Suarez, and the list goes on. And, that's like a fantasy dream. That can really set up your weekend or help you win a matchup where you're having Corbin Carroll get on base 4 different times, score 3, he steals a base, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be a little bit different today on Saturday. It's going to be wind blowing in, a little bit cooler temperatures, but it's up there for one of the best games that we've seen, no matter what you were interested in from a player prop perspective, your rostering players and your fantasy team. It was awesome to see. If you started Corbin Burnes knowing that there's up to 40-mile-per-hour winds blowing out and you got away with an awesome start from him, man, credit to you, because that is pretty tough to do.
Yeah, and Burns basically going into a tough environment, doing a pretty good job. I think right now, maybe the biggest surprise thus far through the month of April is that the National League West, Tom, has been the best division in baseball. You have two teams, two best records with the Padres and the Dodgers. The Giants, I would assume, at some point will come back to earth here a little bit, but they're on pace to win 90 games. They're 13-7. Arizona certainly going to be in it till the end. The Rockies, of course, are horrible. Fired their hitting coach, by the way, Hensley Mullins, and rehired Clint Hurdle, which nothing against Clint Hurdle. I love Clint Hurdle, but it's sometimes better to be friends with the owner than it is to actually be in the game, I guess, because that was out of nowhere. But Tom, I do think the Padres, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks are going to be right there until the end. But if the Giants keep hitting the ball the way that they are, I think they can hang around too.
I do too. We touched on this briefly the other day on Newswire. Like I said, Logan Webb's awesome. Logan Webb had an awesome start last night, and it's going to come down to if that hitting does regress for the Giants, as I think we'd all expected to. When it's all said and done, it's like, will their pitching be able to carry them into the late summer, into the postseason? Because I think the Diamondbacks, we would maybe say, is a better, well-rounded team overall. But, man, the Giants' pitching looks good. Their hitting looks good. We'll get into some more of this as the show goes on. But it's probably the best division in baseball. I think that's what it comes down to. It's the best division in baseball. With the Braves struggling, it's not this trio at the top of the NL East. It's actually this quad group that we have at the top of the NL West. And there's a possibility that 3 of them will make the playoffs.
And the AL East, too, a little bit overrated. The Red Sox have not played consistent enough. The Orioles have not played consistent enough. I don't think Toronto's very good this year. We'll see what direction they go. Yankees have been great at home, but once they go on the road, a little bit of a different story. All right, we'll take a quick time out here on Fantasy Sports today. When we return, we'll go over the hot weeks in fantasy. Had a great week, so stay on the grid for that. Also, don't forget, NBA playoffs begin today. For those of you who want to stream our shows and watch with your second screen against the spread with some of the betting options, got some great games today and tonight in the NBA playoffs and tomorrow. We'll have it covered for you with the SportsGrid app. Also, Stanley Cup playoffs beginning as well. Available for iOS and Android. Just scan that QR code. Tom Vecchio in for George Kurtz. I'm Craig Mish. We'll be back with more Fantasy Sports today. Next.
Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
Would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC, that is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweights.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on Sports Grid. Craig Mish along with Tom Vecchio in for George Kurtz today. Let's take a look at some of the hot batters over the last week or so. Here is who is up over the past week. Nobody hotter than Cal Raleigh, who had a slow start to the month of April and has now picked it up to the point where he has hit 6 home runs, has driven in 8 runs. Of course, Tyler Soderstrom, the only maybe hotter power guy there is in baseball. But again, 6 home runs, 8 RBIs, 1 stolen base to go along with it. And Tom, in this world of never-ending catchers that don't hit, one here in Cal Raleigh, who's a really good one.
He's awesome, and I think this is what we should be expecting from Cal Raleigh, someone that has backed him for a few years, whether it be in fantasy or player props. Like, he's going to go through these general ups and downs just because he does have a higher strikeout rate, but he has a ton of power, right? So we're going to get some of these variants weeks or stretches from him where he starts off the year super slow. He just got that contract extension, but now he's kind of settled into things, and now he's hitting a ton of home runs. Also, there's a part of me that believes, at times at least, that I think they can pitch around him just because the Mariners lineup isn't as strong compared to some of the other teams. So they can kind of move away from him, opposing pitchers, that is, and pitch around him just because they don't have to worry about him. They don't have to worry about the guys behind him in the lineup. But Cal Raleigh in himself is awesome.
Yeah, having a really good start to the season. Now, last year, the San Francisco Giants went into the overseas market and signed Jung-Ho Lee, and after a couple of months of playing, got hurt. We didn't see him for the rest of the season, and now we're seeing why they signed him. Tom, he's hitting .400 this past week, 2 home runs, 7 runs driven in, and when they gave him that mega contract, everyone was like, wow, what are they doing here? We just don't even really know who this guy is. And some people thought it was just simply because the Giants were having a hard time signing players. They just couldn't get anybody to play there. But this guy is actually legit. And I mean, I guess the only question is, can he stay healthy? Because there's no doubt his numbers overseas and now his numbers this season are off to a great start.
Off to a great start, and I love what they did. You know, they stuck with him. You know, they spent a lot of money last season to get him. I think he's in a great spot in the lineup. You know, we'll get to Wilmer Flores. Will he be able to sustain what he's doing? Matt Chapman has gone through some wild swings to start the year where he looked good, and then he was like 1 of 20 at the plate. I think they have what it takes to be a good offense. I'm not going to say great, but I do like what they have. But we do have to be worried about their splits. Obviously, when they play at home, it's absolutely not one of the best hitters' park. It's actually a significant pitcher's park. So there's going to be times where he looks great on the road. Yankee Stadium, he was awesome, right? And now they're back at home. We may see a little bit different production, but you stay with him the entire season. He's going to be good.
Now, the Cleveland Player Development Factory looks like they found another player here. They just keep doing this every year. Gabriel Arias. When Cleveland traded Jimenez and some other players in the offseason, people were wondering, what in the world are they doing? But this is what happens, Tom, with Cleveland. Every year they find new guys to come up and perform. 3 home runs, 8 runs driven in, 385 over the past week. Just credit to the system and the organization. And every year we got to find who those young guys are on Cleveland because they come up and they make an impact.
Yeah, I actually picked him up last Saturday, a week ago. So I am totally on board. And looking at some of his underlying stats, he's striking out far less this season. It's at 29%. I shouldn't say far less. It's 29%. It was at 32% last year. His ISO is far higher. That's what's higher. It's at 230 this year compared to 131 last year. His career ISO number is 148. Is that going to be sustainable? Is he going to hit 100%, 100 points higher on his ISO this year compared to last? It's probably not going to be sustainable. But when the iron is hot, I'm going to strike, and I'm going to roll with it as long as possible. So I love what he's doing. I love that he has multi-position eligibility. I think he bats on a good spot in the lineup. You give him a spot where Manzardo and J-Ram and Steven Kwan are on base, he's going to knock some players in.
Now, as far as on the downside here, not everything is rosy for some fantasy owners this past week. Let's talk about the Baltimore Orioles. Adley Rutschman, who I know that we're still assuming is going to be a superstar type catcher. And look, if you look at his numbers the last couple of years, he's coming on. But look, the catching position is just so demanding. 111, 1 home run, 2 runs driven in. And needless to say, a little bit of a disappointing week.
Yeah, disappointing week for him and kind of the Orioles overall, where they're scoring a ton of runs, then they're not scoring any. They're scoring a ton of runs, and now they're not. And it was, a slow start for various players in their lineup. I would be more inclined if I had to put like a name on it that like Rutschman is an all-star, but maybe not a superstar, if that makes sense. Where, as you said, the catching position is so demanding that I think his numbers will be good and they'll be consistent, but he may not be that superstar level that we kind of saw from when he first broke out. So I'm still encouraged by Rutschman, but I wouldn't be selling out to get him if you were in a dynasty situation.
All right, well, the hottest player on the Angels the last few weeks, of course, was Mike Trout. Finally, Trout has cratered a little bit back to earth. Nothing I don't think, Tom, to worry about in particular. Everyone's going to have good weeks and bad weeks. Just a bad week, I think, for him.
Yeah, it was a bad week for him. Kind of slow week for the offense overall. That series versus the Rangers, they scored, 4 runs over the total in the 3 games. I think if you drafted Trout this year in a redraft league, you knew anything was possible. Right? You knew the injury risk was there. You knew his numbers weren't going to be as good as they were in years past. You should have been ready, I should say. Maybe you didn't know, but you should have been ready for anything. I think the power will be consistent for Trout. The average won't be. Like, we're going to see him hit some home runs as we have seen to start the year, but his average will not be as high as we're traditionally used to seeing.
And finally, Xander Bogaerts of the San Diego Padres, Tom, was given a few years ago that mega deal by the Padres. It has not worked out, to say the least. He hasn't hit a home run yet, I don't believe, this season. 167, just 1 stolen base. I got to tell you, I am surprised. I did not think that Bogaerts' career would go this far south as it has in San Diego. And the reason why, I guess no one really talks about it all that often, is because especially in the game, generally speaking, the Padres are really good and everybody else around him is really good. So they've been able to sort of mask this. But there's just no getting out of it. His ADP has fallen the last few years and for good reason, no matter where they play him.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of different team factors. Obviously, there's always been a ton of storylines with Tatis, and then they bring up Jackson Merrill, who was awesome last year. They signed him to this contract. There's always Machado there. Arise is, going to be hitting a million singles. So like there are other storylines that prevents him from being the headline, but I wouldn't be too worried about Xander. The power won't be there anymore, but that offense is too good to pass up.
All right, we will take a quick time out on Fantasy Sports Today. We'll give you our aces of the week in fantasy. You're watching Fantasy Sports Today here on Sports. We'll be back right after this.
Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC, that is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweight.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on Sports Grid. I'm Craig Mish. George Kurtz on vacation this week. He'll be back next week. Tom Vecchio is in the house. Let's go over our aces of the week in fantasy. I did not have to look very far. I went back to Thursday night, and I got to tell you, I think this is one of the best starts in baseball all season. Christopher Sanchez of the Philadelphia Phillies, 7 innings pitched against the Giants, 2 earned runs. But look at those strikeout numbers, 12 strikeouts and 1 walk. And Tom, I mean, this is why Philadelphia is so dangerous. We haven't even uttered Ranger Suarez's name yet this season. They got Wheeler, they got Nola, they got Sanchez. They just keep coming at you with these different pitchers and these different hitters. I can understand why Phillies fans want them to at least get to the World Series. I know they got LA in front of them too, but I mean, this season better be better than last year for them, because they just keep rolling out these pitchers and these hitters. It never stops for them, and they're not afraid to go out and make these trades. I mean, I forgot Jesus Luzardo's on there too. I should have known. Marlins traded, and he'll pitch this weekend as well. I got to just say that this was one of the more impressive starts of the season, I thought.
Absolutely, and they have Andrew Painter on the way back. Well, I don't know his official timeline, but he is expected to be back at some point. They just have every piece that you possibly want, right? And that's what it comes down to. They have the hitting, they have the pitching, they have the experience. It's time to just finally put it all together. That's what it really comes down to. Just rubber meets the road. It's time to do it.
All right, so I didn't know that Sam would allow an ace of the week to have less than 3 innings pitched. I wasn't aware of the qualification here, Sam. Tom, they should have given you a better memo than this. But go ahead. Who is your ace of the week?
So I play in a league that it's not saves, it's saves/holds. And I always like to give spotlight to players that do things in fantasy leagues that aren't always traditional. And that's Luke Weaver coming up with 2 holds. We know he's not the closer for the Yankees anymore, but I like the fact that he goes out there. He's reliable. He's consistent. He's never going to be striking out a ton of hitters. But you give me a player that is valuable in other types of fantasy leagues, whether you're playing AL, NL only. And again, this is a saves hold league that I'm in. Give me the holds. Luke Weaver, get out there, pick up some holds. I love it.
How many points is that in that league?
So it's not a points league. It is a 5v5 head-to-head roto league. So there's no points. So it's just add it all up. I love it. Give me saves, holds, no wins. We do QS. Best way to do it.
Yeah, let me tell you something. This is extreme bias. How many leagues you got this guy in? This is like extreme bias here. Sam, how did you let this pass?
My first time on the show, I didn't know there was a 3-inning minimum qualification.
I mean, listen, the way that this works, Tom, is that Sam during the week at some point will ask for this. You got to deliver someone. Now, this is not your fault. This is Sam's fault. That you were allowed to use a guy with 2 holds as the ace of the week. Now again, it's partially my fault too, because I could have just as easily went in and taken a look at this before the show and said, hey, Tom, we could get away with this because it is 8:26 in the morning and nobody's going to be, up watching anyway. But generally speaking, this has got to be a guy who goes like 6-7 innings. He picks up a win. He strikes out 10 guys. And I understand that you want to highlight that, but we could do that at the end of the show or something like that for like.
That's fair. Listen, I have Scooble, I have Reagan's on both on same
I don't
team.
care who you have. It doesn't matter. I want the.
I'm saying I don't want to highlight the chalk.
Listen, forget your team, okay? This is not the Tom Vecchio team show. Give me the best ace of the week. The pitch. I don't have Christopher Sanchez in any league that I'm playing in, but I just go to the app, I check the stats, and say, boom, this is the guy that I want. So that's where we're looking. Now, it's not your fault. I understand this is your first time hosting the show. You haven't been given the parameters. Sam is the producer. When he got that, he should have looked at it and said, oh, 2 innings, 2 holds. All right, that's like 5. You know what, Tom? We probably need somebody better than that. But he didn't do that. And honestly, it's not his fault. But I'm going to have to eliminate. You're going too far with all your players. You got to give me somebody that's not on your team.
We gotta break this down. Maybe in the next segment we'll circle back, find a true ace of the week that went out there, pile up the strikeouts, tough matchup, whatever it might be. But we could make an easy argument for a lot of different players. So we'll circle back on this.
Yamamoto's a good one. Again,
Yamamoto's an awesome one.
Sam, you're going to show this guy on the screen. It's just 2 innings pitched. Come on, Sam, thank you, please. It's bad enough he's a Yankee to begin with, and then we have to just go to him over and over again. So there you go. Now that would have been a good 12. Was it last night? You probably couldn't have given Yamamoto last. I don't think you could have done that. That wouldn't have been fair. But I understand. Again, it's not your fault. It's Sam's fault. All right, coming up next, we're gonna do what Tom loves the most. We're going to talk some NFL drafts, so make sure you stick around with us. You're watching Fantasy Sports Today here on Twitter.
Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribe, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC, that is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweight.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to Fantasy Sports. Today we move ahead from holds to draft talk, and that's where we're going to go here because the NFL draft is coming up next Thursday. It is finally here. Of course, we've got exclusive coverage on Thursday and Friday, and I do believe a little bit Saturday here on SportsGrid, so make sure you stay tuned to that. And whether or not, Tom, it'll be a wild draft still remains to be seen, but the unusual part about this draft, something that we've never seen before, is the fact that every single team in the first round still owns their pick, which, I mean, I just don't ever recall at this point in my history of watching this draft, and it has been a really long time. So, sometimes they predict craziness. Teams are going to make a lot of trades. That doesn't happen. Sometimes they predict no trades, and then they do happen. But I do think that there's a lot of uncertainty beyond the first pick of the draft, which definitely will have people intrigued on night one on Thursday.
Absolutely. I think there will be trades just because of there's a lot of like really good players, and there's a lot of teams that may need multiple things that they'll be willing to wait. They'll be willing to trade down, take a couple extra picks, whatever it might be. Like you said, outside that first pick, the draft could go in a number of different ways. And if it goes down one path, then we may see things play out pretty rationally. But if a team pivots, then like, oh, you thought a player wasn't going to be available at 7, 8, 9, all of a sudden he is available. And that's going to not only change what they do, but it's going to change the rest of the course of the first round, or at least the top half of it. So I'm interested in it, obviously, solely from a fantasy perspective, and I'm ready to get into things.
Yeah, and this is the first time in one of my leagues I even have a pick in the rookie draft here. I'm just constantly chasing the championship. I hate losing in this stuff, especially with paying. So the big debate here, and I think, I don't know, Sam, if I talked about this last week or the week before. I know I talked about it on Newswire here, is that I don't get this Shedeur Sanders stuff. I don't understand it because I feel like I watched him play the last couple of years at Colorado, and he played fantastic. I'm eliminating the last name and Coach Prime and all this stuff. I mean, I know that their defense was horrible, but it also forced him into a lot of situations where he was constantly having to throw the ball. And in a league where there are basically 15 to 20 decent quarterbacks, no good backup quarterbacks, I don't know how Cleveland and New York and some of these other teams could pass on Sanders. But Tom, it does appear as though, if you're reading the tea leaves, that's gonna happen. To me, I don't get it. It would be Cam Ward for me at 1 and Sanders at 2. And if I was not going to take Sanders at 2, I would look to trade so somebody could move up and draft him. I don't know what has happened in the last 2 months. Seen all the other quarterbacks rise, and Dart and Milroe and everybody else, but this one is perplexing to me. I don't get it.
It's perplexing for a lot of reasons. And like, why did the Giants go out and sign Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston? Like, this was such a clear thing. If you thought it would be Ward, Carter, and then you just you have a franchise potential quarterback to pair with a franchise wide receiver. It should have been so straightforward in this offseason for so many teams. And they did a lot of terrible things. That's what it comes down to. So I think Cleveland should trade out of there. They should trade down, allow someone, or no, I should say, if Cleveland's not going to take Carter, I think is the wrong move. They should just be taking Sanders. And if they're going to take Carter, you might as well just trade down and give a team that wants to trade up and take that quarterback, because that's ultimately what they need. Like, it is a quarterback-driven league. It's great to have great pass rushers, but you need that quarterback to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland should just take Sanders at 2 and then go about their business. But if he doesn't go there, Tom, who are some other fits potentially for you?
I want to see players go to a spot where they can make an immediate impact. So I think the Saints, obviously, with the Derek Carr news this past week and a half, he's got the shoulder issue. He can go there. A good enough offense, a good enough defense, get him there. I think that's a good spot. 2 would be the Giants. Get Russell Wilson out of there. Just draft Sanders. Like, what is Russell Wilson going to do for you? What, 3 years, 2 years? But you have a quarterback you have the next 10 or 15 years. Get Russell Wilson out of there. Keep Jameis Winston because he's fun. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is solely based on need, right? Are they going to sign Rodgers? Is he going to retire? Who knows what they're going to do? But you trade for DK Metcalf. Him, George Pickens, like, that could be a really, really fun offense and just a potential for a ton of fantasy production.
Yeah, and he would have to fall quite a bit to get to Pittsburgh beyond New Orleans. And, of course, the Carr stuff came out about a week ago from ESPN that he may miss a portion of the season, if not all. And then the Giants, of course, make sense as well. All right, so we've seen a pivot over the last couple of years. Running backs are now being taken in the first round again. That's good to see. And Ashton Genty had a career season and a record-breaking season at Boise State. So certainly there are a number of teams that could draft him. We saw Atlanta, of course, take a running back a couple of years ago. I feel like Genty's going to go in the first round again, Tom, but is it a guarantee that he goes in the top 10?
I think so. We saw some quotes yesterday from Pete Carroll, the Raiders GM. His name is escaping me right now, but he said that he was of the belief that, taking running backs in the first round, high in the first round. And when it comes to Genty, like, we want him to go to a spot where he's immediately going to be in a spot to see 20 plus touches every single game. That's what we want. And if you go to the Raiders, a lot of people obviously want him to go to the Cowboys because they, after losing out on Zeke, not spending the money to get Derrick Henry. And then I think the Chicago Bears is also an interesting option just because they have a good offensive line. Bringing Ben Johnson, like, we have some offensive juice to work with. Pair him up with Caleb Williams to move throughout the rest of their careers. Like, that would be a truly fun spot. But I really do think it'll come down to the Raiders.
Yeah, and Cowboys, that's a good call by you. Maybe there's a shot that the Cowboys actually do the right thing and finally take one of those running backs. Bears could be a spot as well. All right, Terratoa McMillan from Arizona lit the world on fire over the first couple of games of the college football season. Finally teams started covering him a little bit more, so it became more difficult as time went on. But the notion is in the NFL, not going to be able to constantly double a guy, and so there's a lot of options for him, Tom. Certainly you're looking at teams that haven't had a true number one wide receiver, and there are a couple of teams in the first 10, 15 picks or so that certainly could make that pick.
Yeah, I think the Pats have to jump up to the immediate top of that list. They don't have a number one receiver. They haven't had it for a while. They have a bunch of okay, good-ish receivers. But if McMillan goes there, pair him with Drake May, like, Ted McMillan could have legitimately a 30% target share each and every game for the next 10 seasons in a row. And that's what we want to see, like a high volume option. Now, if he doesn't go there, there's a chance maybe the Panthers are kind of in the same boat where they need someone. And then Cowboys also, like, they need to rectify things on offense. And outside of CeeDee Lamb, what does their offense look like? Like, CeeDee Lamb is awesome, but he can't be the entire offense. So Enrico Dowdle is fine. I think he's a serviceable running back, but pairing him alongside CeeDee Lamb would be awesome to see from a fantasy perspective. Does that turn into anything when it comes to real wins? Probably not.
No, Dallas still with a lot of issues going into the season. All right, so the other running back that has kind of climbed up the boards a little bit in the offseason, in between the end of the college football season and the draft, is Omarion Hampton from the University of North Carolina. And it's funny, Tom, you have him pegged potentially for Denver. I'm seeing so much of that. And naturally, it's just a perfect fit for what the Broncos are trying to do. Steelers is a possibility as well. I mean, going into the last couple of years, it's interesting. If you may remember, Tom, the Broncos were that running back factory where basically anybody who ran for Denver was fantastic. And then came Javonte Williams, who has a really cool name and looked good in a jersey, but he never really played much or well.
Yeah, didn't play well. He wasn't healthy. He wasn't consistent. The underlying metrics of yards per carry, whatever it might be, were never there. They've Jaleel McLaughlin. They have like this three-headed back. And if they bring in Hampton, he could be the guy, and they kind of sort out the rest of the depth chart from there. And listen, if they can rely and lean on one back, Hampton would be in a spot to succeed. And then the Steelers would be there as a secondary option, just based on the fact that Najee Harris isn't there anymore. He went to the Chargers. So there could be a role to fill there as well.
Yeah, definitely so. And a lot of offensive players, of course, is what we like for fantasy. So no doubt we'll be keeping a close eye on the draft. If Hampton does not go to either of those two teams, could be a second round pick, but some people do 2 running backs to go in the first round of the NFL draft. All right, so next week we will recap the first 2 days of the NFL draft here on Fantasy Sports Today. But coming up next, we dive back into baseball, 2 start pitchers for the week ahead. You're watching Fantasy Sports Today. Don't go away. We'll be back after these messages.
Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC, that is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweight.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back, Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish along with Tom Vecchio. George Kurtz on vacation this week. George will be back next week. Is that right? I forget. Yeah, he will be back. He missed last week and this week. Okay, got it. So let's talk about some two-star pitchers, Tom, for the upcoming week in fantasy, starting April 21st and then ending, of course, as we get ready to, put a bow on the month of April and look toward May already. It's kind of crazy. This first month is flying by. So, boy, this is a tough one here because the talent is there, but you just never know what you're going to get with Robbie Ray. Easy matchup against Milwaukee at home, you would think. But, I mean, can he get out of the first inning without walking 7 guys? I mean, it's always the issue with him. And then he faces off with Texas. Of course, that's a little bit more difficult on the weekend. But, I mean, there's nothing left to say here. I mean, he's not disowned, although some people may want to do that in fantasy leagues. It's pretty much you got to start him. I don't know that there's a lot of other options here, but what's his whip going to look like at the end of the year?
I mean, that's a great question. We saw, like, as everyone likes to say, the full Robbie Ray experience the other day when they were in Philly. Like, the strikeouts can be there, but we're also going to see 4 walks. We're also going to see home runs. So I would say, like, if we're going to put a saying on this, like, lukewarm, like, he could probably get it done versus Milwaukee. He could probably strike out 8 versus Texas, but he may also give up 5 runs and walk 5 hitters. So it's okay if you need it. It's like certainly not the best option.
All right, next pitcher is someone that it feels like we're like running on year 2 of still waiting for this guy to be at the front of a fantasy rotation. I mean, the numbers are there sometimes, but I mean, Tom, I'm still sort of waiting on Gavin Williams here. I feel like we mention him on the show every week, and every once in a while, it's a really good start. Sometimes it's a step back. I don't know what to make of Boston. That's the second start. It seems like Boston can either put a 10 on you or nothing. And then he faces off with the Yankees and another player that's pretty heavily owned in fantasy. But I would say that, my thing with this guy is I'm still sort of waiting for him to turn into the old Bieber or Bibby or one of these front men in Cleveland's rotations. Really good pitcher, a 3-starter, a 4-starter. Haven't seen Ace yet, though.
Yeah, you haven't seen Ace yet, and the question is, like, do you want to trust that versus a great lineup and one that can be great with Boston? So, I'd say I'm probably out on it this week for Gavin Williams. The strikeout rate has dipped compared to last year. The walks are up this year. The home runs are up this year. Is he going to give up a tremendous amount of hard contact? No, but the fly balls are concerning, especially against those offenses. I'd probably play on the safe side and probably wait a week.
All right. Detroit has a really good defense behind Reese Olson and behind all their starting pitchers. don't score a ton of runs generally, and Olsen's a little bit of a hit or miss type guy. This week, the matchups are as follows: against the Padres on the 22nd, and then at home against the Orioles on the 27th. I guess I could say the same thing for the Orioles, as you mentioned earlier. You just generally never know here. Padres, that's a tough matchup for him. But as long as they're playing good defense, he gives you a shot. He gets enough swings and misses, but another one of those guys that's putting a lot of guys on base. Whip, I think 1.5 to start the year.
Yeah, and it really comes down to what type of performance we're going to see from him. He has a 44.1% ground ball rate and a 54.2% medium contact rate. So if he can keep the ball down, he can kind of take away the things that the Padres and the Orioles specifically like to do, is hit home runs. So if he can limit the home runs, limit the amount of free passes, there's a chance he has a good week. I'm not going to say it's great. It's not like we're going to be talking about him, or you and George will be talking about him next week as your ace of the week, putting up 20 strikeouts over these 2 starts. But there's a chance he has a good week.
Jose Soriano of the Angels is one of those pitchers where he's going to need some run support to get you a win. Doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, but does have really good matchups this week, Tom. He faces the Pirates on the 22nd, and the Twins, who have been one of the bigger disappointments in the American League, faces off with them next weekend in Minnesota. I'm going to guess at some point in the month of April, maybe it's the end, that the weather is going to warm up. I mean, this has been, for our friends around the country here, a cooler April than I can remember in a while.
Yeah, a cooler April. Minnesota certainly hasn't gotten things going. I got to say, for Soriano, especially with these matchups, it's got to be like all systems go, right? And like you said, he's never a big strikeout pitcher. We're never going to be looking at him to pile up his strikeouts. But, man, 6 innings, 6 innings, 1-2 earned runs, maybe has, 4 strikeouts. But with the ground ball rate over 60% against these offenses, he can really limit them in terms of power. I say if he's available, you grab him. And if you have him, you're starting him both times. It is just ready to fire with Soriano this week.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, sometimes this is more about the matchups and the players here, but certainly Pittsburgh not setting the world on fire. And without Royce Lewis, once again, the Twins just can't get out of their own way a little bit on offense. All right, so let's move over to the Royals here, and one great matchup, one tough matchup. So do you roll the dice here, Tom? Because you want Bubic in your lineup here, Chris Bubic of the Royals, against Rockies, without a doubt. But then you got to face off with Houston. And look, I mean, Houston's offense, at least to start the season, may not look like it has in the past. I mean, there's a lot of players who have come and gone out of that organization. But now all of a sudden, this guy Cam Smith hits 2 home runs. Maybe he's about to catch fire here. And that creates some danger here for Bubic here. But is it a dice roll for you? Because it's 100% in on Colorado. Houston's got to be less than a 50% shot.
It's got to be less than 50, but I'd be willing to roll with it. I think the skill set that Bubic has, I'm interested in him because he wasn't a starter last year, but he's a starter this year. And when we see a hard contact rate at only 26% combined with 47% ground ball rate, that means he has a 49% medium contact rate. If he can take the power away from Houston, there's a chance he has a good start. So absolutely 100% all in on the Rockies. And I'm cautiously optimistic that he has a good start against the Astros as well.
Are the Rockies, you think that the White Sox have lost 5 in a row too, but are the Rockies the ultimate fade? Because even at home, they don't seem to be hitting.
At what point, like, you have to prove it to me. Like, we know the runs will be there at times, but even Sam knows that Mackenzie Gore is going today on Saturday versus the Rockies. Like, we're not starting Mackenzie Gore. It's the Rockies. They are at home. The runs could be there. He gave up 4 runs, so you lose out on a potential win or QS, but he also could have 8 or 9 strikeouts.
Yeah, no, I mean, right now, I mean, to fire the hitting coach 3 weeks into the season when you spent the entire offseason having a game plan, it is very unusual to see a coach fired, basically before the end of April. And it's the first one in the baseball season. All right, coming up next, we'll go through some streaming options in fantasy baseball. Don't go away.
Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC, that is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweight.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on Sports Grid as we wrap up this first hour of the show talking more fantasy baseball here with you today. We've got Tom Vecchio in the house as George has the week off. Of course, I'm Craig Mish. We've got some streaming options here coming up next week. I'll be doing pregame Tuesday for the Marlins-Reds game, so I'm going to miss this one here. This is Max Meyer starting against the Cincinnati Reds, and Tom... 2 starts ago, Max Meyer was unhittable. He still is getting a ton of swings and misses, way more than he did last year. And it seems as though his pitch usage is just way more up this year in terms of throwing his slider, and that seems to be working. But he did get beat up a little bit by the Arizona Diamondbacks last time out. He'll face off with another really good offense in the Cincinnati Reds. But, Tom, let's call it what it is. I mean, the Reds can throw a 8-10 spot on you, and they can get shut out, too. What do you make of this start?
Well, I can forgive the start versus the Diamondbacks. They're a good offense. It happens. I think we are at the point where Max Meyer is like a rocket ship ready to take off. His swinging strike rate is up at 13.2% compared to 10.3 last year. Strikeout rate overall is up at 27.6%. Walks are still under control. I think it's a good matchup versus the Reds. A 23.7% strikeout rate versus righties. They also, which is the 10th worst in the league. They also have an 84 WRC plus and a 124 ISO. I think this is return to form for him. Again, Diamondback start, it's going to happen. Great offense. They get runners on base. Corbin Carroll steals. Next thing you know, Naylor's coming up and hitting a home run. Pavin Smith, whatever it might be. I can forgive that. I think we are at the precipice of a breakout. I just want to see him pile up the innings, right? We're already at like 24 innings for Max Meyer this season. 24. He had 57 last year. So, let's pile up the innings. Let's keep the strikeouts going, and it will be all good things for him this season.
Yeah, hopefully gets to 120, 130 innings this season. I think that's a pretty good goal. All right, so, the A's fans joke that this guy should have started opening day for them. You could probably make the case. Osvaldo Bido for the A's, has done a really nice job here at the start of the season. But always the asterisk here. I mean, this is playing like Coors Field in Sacramento right now, Tom. Goes up against Texas. I've been very wary about these starts. It seems like out of every 3 games, 2 of them are going way over the total here. The altitude is the highest in the history of Major League Baseball outside of Colorado. And I think that's just going to continue here as we get closer to warmer weather in the summer.
Yeah, so this one's a little tough for me because he's not a big strikeout pitcher at only 15.6%. It's well below the league average. But he has a 50.7% fly ball rate. And putting that into play against the lineup with Texas at home in Sacramento, that's a dangerous recipe. That's a really dangerous recipe. And we know that the Rangers lineup has been a bit up and down. Jake Berger isn't performing as well as we thought he would. But man, a 50% fly ball rate, especially if it's a warm day and there's wind blowing out, that has danger written all over it.
All right, now let's get to this juicy matchup here between the Twins and White Sox next week. David Festa's done a nice job thus far. I see no reason to not play a guy against the Chicago White Sox. I don't know that I would ever say anything is instant fade, but I feel like this is as close as it gets.
Right. And this really just comes down to availability in your leagues. Be a day ahead, be a week ahead. You know that you have even if it's what we would consider a mid-tier pitcher. Forget who we were talking about for Gavin Williams. Like we were talking about him, but someone like, oh, he hasn't broken out yet. He's a 3-4 starter. But you see him, he's going to be starting twice in a week, and one of them's against the White Sox. Grab him. Just fire him up every single time. The White Sox got off to a nice couple wins to start the season, but they quickly fell back down to earth. Start Festa. A 26% strikeout rate is awesome against the White Sox, and he could probably go 7 innings with maybe 1 earned run.
All right. Now, the final one here, I don't know a ton about this guy. Shane Smith pitching for the White Sox in the same series here. I mean, I'm going to guess that he's available in every league, and it's probably a pass, too.
Yeah, you could take him if you desperately need him, but listen, it's what, his first MLB season, 17.2 innings. The only encouraging sign is that he's not giving up a ton of home runs. He has a 50% medium contact rate and a 52.1% ground ball rate. So in theory, if the power isn't there for Minnesota, which it really hasn't, he could probably limit the home runs. I'm not going to say it's going to be great, but the home runs may not be there.
Yeah, and weather always a factor with these two teams as well, whether it's in Minneapolis or the Windy City. All right, that will do it for our first hour of Fantasy Sports today. When we come back next, we'll take a look at the updated MVP odds in the American League. They look very similar to what they did before the season, with the exception of one big name that has entered into the fray. We'll tell you who that is next.
Vegas knows how to celebrate. If you're headed to Vegas for your birthday, plan ahead to get all the birthday freebies the city has to offer. Just by showing your ID, you could get free cash play, scratch cards, drinks, and food at various venues on the Strip. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC, that is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweight.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only